Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Barry Erickson, and I'm Community Engagement Coordinator at Wheaton Public Library. Tonight's program is part of a series called ACES for Aging and Caregiving Engagement and Support. These monthly presentations provide a consolidated source of information and programming for local seniors, covering topics such as social services, caregiver support, financial planning, legal concerns, and much, much more. In this presentation, we will learn to live with greater autonomy, comfort, and security in our current homes. Gina Knight is the president of Castle Keeper, chairman of the National Aging in Place Council's Chicagoland chapter, and on the board of directors for the National Aging in Place Council in Washington, D.C. So thank you so much for being with us tonight, Gina. Welcome, and I will turn the screen over to you.
Thank you so much, Barry. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. As she mentioned, my name is Gina Knight and my company is Castle Keeper. I'm what's called a certified aging in place specialist. And the reason why you would want to work with somebody like myself is really about the fact that we go through a different type of training through the National Association of Home Builders on how something needs to be designed as well as modified properly in your home. So, you know, everybody says they know a guy, they have a friend of a friend or my neighbor or whatever it might be. You've got to remember we're talking about your safety. So you should really think twice about just hiring, you know, John down the street who doesn't have the training. There's two things I want you to learn tonight. One is if you have a suction cup grab bar in your bathroom, please do me the favor of removing that from your bathroom. I want you to think about this logically. That suction cup, if you weigh 150 pounds, when you are in a falling manner, your weight probably close to triple. So how is that suction cup going to help you in a falling situation? So please, if you do have them, I highly recommend you hire somebody to actually install a proper grab bar to keep you safe. That's what this presentation is all about. How we modify our homes, how do we modify ourselves so that we can age in our homes for as long as we choose. And the second thing, like Barry was mentioning, you know, you have all these wonderful programs. The other thing I often recommend is take a manila folder, and when you have important information, whether you hear somebody speak or somebody recommended somebody that they worked with, put that important information in that folder. Because should a crisis takes place, what happens is then you want to automatically start Googling. Googling is not always your friend. You're going to be inundated with information overload, and you really want to be able to reach out to those resources, but you might not remember who those people are. So those are my two important tips for the night. So let's get started. So if you're not aware of the fact that by 2035, there's actually going to be more older people than younger people. So how will that affect you? Well, you may have heard one of the biggest problems in, we'll call it the senior market right now, is there's a shortage of caregivers because, well, COVID certainly had something to do with that. But again, there are more older people than there are younger people. Years back, the parents always relied on their children to ultimately be a caregiver for them. Sadly, with the way the world is right now, most people, both people in their household, need to work to sustain their life. And what happens is the adult children are not necessarily available. People are having children later in life. So they've got all these other things that are going on. So, you know, these are things that, again, you want to think about making some modifications so that in some weird way, you can sort of take care of yourself for a longer period of time. So those are the things that we're going to talk about. When you talk about the term, what is aging in place? The definition is here. It's basically all about making those modifications and making the choice and knowing what services are out there for you, what's available to you. And that's what we're here to talk about, is what's available to you and how can you start making some of those changes, like I said, before the crisis. When you're working on what I refer to as an age in place plan, There's many different components that are going to be a part of this, right? So your house is the first natural thing that you think about is, I need to make some changes in my house, or my condo or my apartment, wherever it is that you live. But there's a lot of other factors that you have to also think about. So your health, your medical situation. These are things that you're going to want to, again, have things in order. Your financial and legal situation, like anything, it costs more and more to age these days. People are living longer. So what used to be your Social Security or a pension that would sustain you, or a 401k plan that maybe you had, what's happening is people are living longer. So we have to figure out, with the help of others, like I said, financial and legal people, how am I going to take my assets of what I have and what makes sense to help me age in place. Transportation can become a factor. We don't want to be secluded in our homes and not have any social interaction. You know, we all dealt with that during the pandemic, and it was really tough on most everybody, no matter what your age was. So that's when we talk about community and social access. Those are other things that we have to think about when we're making that decision to stay at home. Now, I will tell you, many clients, they have the decision to age in place at home, but it doesn't necessarily mean forever. It might mean a 10-year plan. So you want to age in place at home for 10 years before you might consider going to senior living. Or maybe it's consider going to live with a family member and do multi-generational housing. That's another option as well that people really need to think about. One of the things out there is there's a misnomer that you can only age in place in your home, and that's really not true. You can age in place in a community. Years back, people used to refer to things as a nursing home. A nursing home, and they say, oh, I don't want to go to a nursing home. Oh my God, I want to die in a nursing home. I get it. A nursing home in today's world is really more of a skilled nursing community. There are wonderful senior living communities that you can also age in place. So tonight we're really talking about modifications in our home, but I would just want you to have that in the back of your head that, you know, you can also age in place in a community as well. So to get started with how am I going to age in place safely, the number one thing I talk about with my clients is we refer to it as tidy up. I'm sure you've heard the word downsizing. Downsizing is very, very important to how your home will be safe. You know, if you've raised your family in your home for, 40, 50, 60 years, think about the amount of things you've accumulated. I'm sure many of you out there have more cups and you name it in your home that you don't need, or you've still got some of your kids' stuff. Well, what happens is, I don't want you to be trying to go down into your basement and you can't, you're setting yourself up for a fall, and we do not want a fall. So tidying up is really something that we need to look at again today before that crisis, because ultimately you're not using these things. They may even not have any value, or who knows, you could uncover something that has a lot of value. Well, then maybe we need to find those things. So tidying up is a really big part of aging in place to keep you safe. We talked about design and home modification. Those are very important factors depending on how things are changing for you. And another third big component is home managed services. And what that is, we're going to talk about a little bit later, but what that basically is how are you going to maintain your home? Your home has to be maintained in order for you to stay safe. So just like your health, if you do not maintain your home, it falls apart too. So part of our successful age in place plan, we have to think about pros and cons. What makes sense from a budget standpoint? What can you afford to do? Some people will say, oh my God, it costs $30,000 to reconstruct my bathroom. Well, okay, that might sound like a con. However, think about how fast $30,000 would go if you were in a senior living community. Now, those rooms can cost you anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 a month, depending on where you go. You'll be spending that $30,000 in 1 year. So if you think about the fact that if you are still in reasonable health and you do want to age in place, maybe making those changes really is not a con anymore. It's really more of a pro, because if those changes allow you to stay in your home, let's say for 5 years, Now it's definitely a pro. Maybe you can stay there for 10 years. But if your health has declined and your mobility is very poor, I would never be recommending that you redo a bathroom, because you might only get a couple of months longer to stay there, but now you've spent that money and that's not necessarily the right thing. So in that situation, it definitely is more of a con. So these are things, again, we have to think about when we're putting together what we say our plan is. We all went through the pandemic. And so a big part of that, people were locked out from seeing each other. So God forbid we go and ever experience that again. A lot of people really started thinking about during the pandemic how their loved one might have been in a community and they were unable to see them. But if they were at home and they were safe at home, they had that option to still see them. So again, these are just thought-provoking things that we need to think about. And who would have ever thought we would have been in a pandemic? So, and we all experienced that for way too long. We talk about maintaining the home. Why? Because again, it's where you're going to age in place. So we want to make sure it's a safe area. We want to make sure if we're making any changes to our home, it's adding value and it's also practical for what you need based on your health, your mobility, your medical diagnosis if you have one. Those are all the components that we have to think about. This goes back to my statement of do not just hire John the handyman down the street. You've got to work with someone who's going to help you figure out what I call that master plan. So this is kind of the aging cycle, right? We start out as a baby and we need our parents to help us. But guess what? As we age, it reverts the other way around. So as we age, now we're looking for our children or other extended family to help us. Again, this is something that we have to think about. If we're going to stay at home, is there someone who is going to be able to help me? Maybe your adult children are wonderful, but maybe they don't live here. They're not local. So now we have to think about what makes the most sense. So part of this plan, we want to think about what involvement do you have in your community? If you're really involved in your community, staying at home probably makes a lot of sense because you're going to be engaging with people. You're not being isolated. You're keeping active. So then you've got exercise in your world. Are you going to have friends, children, grandchildren come visit you? Well, then maybe you still want a home. That's another good reason. We talked about what are those plans, that 1 to 3 year plan? What's that 4 to 6 year plan? These categories, when you're choosing that goal structure, you've got to think about and be honest with yourself realistically. What is my medical situation? What is my mobility situation? And that's how we determine what is the best way to proceed, because we only have the amount of money that we have, right? So we want to make sure that we are using it in the best way so that we can live a wonderful life to whenever that is. So that's part of that age in place plan. So I mentioned, there's steps that we go through, and that assessment of the home, that's one of the most important first steps, is working with a certified age in place specialist who can go into your home and determine what is the best way that we can modify this home to keep you safe based on your individual needs. So no two people are ever alike, because their health, their mobility, their situation is different, but their home is very different. So again, there are many people whose homes we go into and they really can't stay there because there is no way to make a bathroom on the first floor. There's 2 flights of stairs to get to their bedroom and they're struggling to walk. So there's lots of reasons why you want to make sure we're figuring out that right plan. The beauty of aging in place at home nowadays, and the pandemic, one positive thing that definitely came out of the pandemic is telehealth. So years ago, we had to always get in the car and travel to go see the doctor over, needing your blood pressure medication renewed or something simple. And maybe blood pressure is a bad example because they usually want to obviously check your blood pressure, but just those basic type of, you want to chat with the doctor about something. Now you can do it from home. So that's another lovely feature of being able to age in place. Some of those things can work. We want to make sure when you're aging in place that you have a plan, as we mentioned, but you've also got to make sure you've got the right professionals in place. And this goes back to my statement earlier about having that folder and putting those important people in there that should you need them, they can help you. So those are, who's the doctors? Do you have a care manager? Do we know what a care manager is? Do you have an elder law attorney? Do you have the proper legal documents that you need for your future? Maybe you have an illness and you need a patient advocate. So maybe you're dealing with something that's palliative care and a long-term illness that you're going to be around for a long time, but it's something you have to manage. Well, maybe you need a patient advocate for that. Maybe you can have OT and PT right in your home. How wonderful is that? You used to always have to go out for those services. Now they can come to your home. As I mentioned, financial planners, your insurance, long-term care insurance, keep that in mind. If you have a long-term care insurance policy, some of the policies out there do have a component for home modifications. So you need to check that and see if you do. And obviously in-home care. We all know about caregivers and how wonderful services that they can provide and kind of give you more longevity. You might need just a little bit of assistance every day or every other day. And that's a wonderful thing that is available to us. And then I talked about maintaining the home, and that's where the carpenters, the plumbers, the electricians, the HVAC, all those things are so important to still maintain the home that we're going to age in place. The other thing about maintaining that home is we want to make sure that it keeps its value, because should something change in your health and you do need to go into a senior living community or whatever that might be, you want to make sure that the money, that the equity that you think is in your home is still there. So you still can't neglect the home. If your plan is to stay at home, you still have to take care of the home. So when I talk about this particular thing is ages and stages of a home. And the reason I say that is, again, we talk about how your mobility can change, a diagnosis can change, and that's going to affect the age and the stage of your home. So let's just say today we only make a modification in your living room for something, but you call 6 months later and somebody had a fall. And now they're not able to get in and out of a bathtub. We have to change a shower, whatever that might be. So things can change based on things that change in your life. So there's stages in which we're going to change a home. This diagram is just giving you kind of an overview of all the different areas that can be affected in your home that will help you stay safe. So let's look at some of them. So some of the easiest things to change are wonderful. Like I said, a first floor bathroom. That is so important. Why? Even if it's not a bathroom that has a shower ability, you're not climbing stairs all day long just to use the bathroom. Why? Stairs are probably the #1 place that a fall takes place. We do not want to have a fall. That's the goal, and everything with aging in place is not to have a fall. We don't want that fall because sadly, probably 75% of the time, that fall can be detrimental. And so we want to make sure that we're trying to avoid that fall. Minimum 32 clearance for doors. The reason that is some older homes, the doorways are very narrow. Well, that becomes a problem if you're using a walker. It becomes even a bigger problem if you're using a wheelchair. Now, we don't know if that's going to happen, but most older people at some point in their lives end up using a walker. So again, these are things that we can think about in advance for our age in place plan. If we're going to stay in that home, these are things we can start addressing now. It could be widening hallways for medical beds. We're going to talk about grab bars for your bathroom and your shower areas, handheld shower heads. One of the most wonderful things, especially if you ever are working with a caregiver, that's so important. Lighted hallways, that's very important. Lever door handles, that's a little door handle there. The beauty of that is, you don't have to, use your hand and maybe you have arthritis, and trying to turn a knob is not so easy. Just like trying to grab one of those little light switch levers. That's why paddle switches are so wonderful, because you can use your elbow, for goodness sakes. And everything should always be lighted. It's all about safety. Do not walk around in the dark. That's never a smart move. These are wonderful. I always tell all of my seniors, please do not get on a step stool in your closet. When your blouses are up on the top, please think about installing this wonderful little lever. What it does, you can see the lady on the right there, and it actually pulls all those shirts right to her level. So she's not getting on a stool, which of course you're putting yourself at risk. God forbid you lose your balance or get lightheaded. This is a wonderful little thing, and it just pulls right towards you. So you can see that picture on the left there, how the shirts are down at the bottom there, and they're right at her eye level, if you will. Bathing, of course, is one of the most important things to get through our day as we're aging in place. And there's lots of different seats and features in which you can get in and out of a shower and or tub area. If you have a tub, I highly recommend that picture in the middle there. What it allows you to do is a longer bench, and you can kind of scooch over into the tub area to take a shower. I don't recommend tubs for anybody over the age of 50, for goodness sakes, because for whatever reason, balance does become an issue and you're just setting yourself up for something. If you have the means to change that tub into either a walk-in or a roll-in shower, which I'm going to show you in a little bit, those are really wonderful things to think about. This picture on the right here, this is a wonderful thing if you have somebody who maybe has a short-term rehab type situation in the home. Who knew you could get something that can actually wash your hair while you're laying down? So I always love to show that because people don't even know these things exist. Toileting, another daily thing we have to think about, right? The picture in the middle is my favorite. The reason being is you are going to use two hands. It's very similar to a walker, and you're going to stay sturdy. And that's a wonderful thing because, again, that on and off is where sometimes becomes difficult. That picture on the right, it's wonderful that there's a grab bar there, but as you can see, the other one is so far away that the problem is if you try to just use one, you can still end up tucking and rolling and it's still ending up on the floor. So that's why it's always good. 2 feet steady, 2 arms steady before we up or down. The one on the left there is basically a freestanding commode, should you not have the ability to make some changes in a bathroom. So I talked about handheld shower heads, and the reason I like those is if you ever get to the point of needing a caregiver for assistance, the beauty of that is they can assist you with that water, spraying it in the proper place. So that's why I like to show those pictures too. Whether you're using a caregiver or not, it's a wonderful feature to have that maybe you can't stand that long and you are going to use that shower chair. So all the more reason a handheld shower head is wonderful. They also have them where you can put that lady on the bottom right there. They have a magnet on the back where you could put a magnet on the wall to the right of her, and you literally just put it there. You don't have to even get back up to put it back up at the top. So that's another wonderful feature. But at a minimum, if you have a tub, please make sure that you're putting the right grab bars in. Again, no suction cups, please. So as our mobility changes, and maybe we're using a walker or maybe we're using a wheelchair, could be long-term, could be short-term, based on maybe some rehab or maybe a surgery or something you had. The problem is in our homes, we have a lot of different little thresholds that go from different. So if you see that picture in the top middle, you know, there are different types of flooring. So there's always that threshold piece, which when your mobility is, we'll call it normal, you don't necessarily notice that. But if you are using a walker or you are using a wheelchair, that little lip that transitions you from the different flooring can actually become a hazard to you. But there are wonderful little ramps, as you can see on the right-hand side there, that go on both sides of the threshold. Coming in or out of a home with just a little 1-inch step, believe it or not, can be a problem, especially if you're in a wheelchair. You can't just go up those hills. There are little bumps, but they're not that easy to get over. And the person who's trying to assist you, it's very difficult. So these simple little ramps are wonderful features. As we age, one of my other favorite things to think about are these lift chairs. The beauty behind them is it's a wonderful, wonderful comfy chair that we all love. But the cushier your chair is, the harder it is to get in and out of. So the lift chairs do the work for you. So that's something you want to think about as well. Rails on the side of a bed. If you're somebody who's always tossing and turning, the last thing we want is for you to fall out of bed. Those are really easy things that go under your mattress. They secure a certain way. The lady there on the right, that's a great little feature. It's kind of like a spring tension rod that you see that holds a shower curtain, but this one goes from the floor to the ceiling. And you could have that next to your bed so that you can help pull yourself out of bed. Sometimes we just need a little assistance. So that's a wonderful feature as well. I'm sure everybody has seen these. So these are the little stair lifts that can get you up to that second floor. Now, keep in mind, there's a couple things we have to think about. Some people's homes, what they don't think about, they say, oh, I just need a stair lift. That's all I need. Well, maybe so. However, when you get to the top of that stair, there has to be the right area in which you can exit that stair chair. Because if you don't, you will end up coming right back down those stairs, and then you've accomplished nothing. So not every home can accommodate this. The other thing is you have to keep in mind, they vary in cost. You know, there's kind of like anything. You can get the low priced one, you can get the Cadillac. Weight has a lot to do with it as well. How the chair turns is always another thing, but they also require power. So keep in mind, it's not just the cost of the lift, it has to have power. They use battery packs, but the battery packs have to be charged 24 hours, which hooks up to that rail. So you still need the power. And sadly, they have 6-foot cords, and so it has to be close by. So that's just another thing you have to think about. So I like to show this picture simply because it kind of gives you an overview of different things you need to be thinking about. So we talked about grab bars. So I love that little chair, seat there that folds up. The reason I like that is if you have one of those showers where the glass slides from side to side. So let's think about it. We slide both pieces of glass, we'll call it towards the shower head, right? And now you're going to walk into your shower. But guess what? A shower chair is sitting there. So now you're trying to scooch around the shower chair. You are setting yourself for a fall in your own shower that you put something in there to help you. So the reason I like the fold up is because when you're not using it, it's folded up, which allows you to enter a shower that might be tight, like the one I mentioned. And then when you're in here, that just pulls down. So kind of like the old theater seats that used to pull down. So it's a very similar thing. I happen to like the ones that the legs come down. There's something weird about people. They don't want to sit or relax on a chair that doesn't have legs because they feel like they're floating in the wall and will it hold them? So I do like the ones that have the legs that come down. It's just kind of a mental thing. And this picture also shows where someone who's in a wheelchair can also utilize the sink as well. So it's a roll-up sink. Oh, and comfort height toilets. So there are toilets in some of your homes that are 14 inches. The older we get, the harder that is on our knees, the harder that is on our back. You can get them now anywhere from 18 to 19 inches. You would be amazed what a couple inches can do for you. So it's another wonderful thing anybody should have done because you don't even realize how wonderful that is. Again, who wants to talk about toilets, but it's a daily thing that we're dealing with in our home. And if you're going to age in place, I would highly recommend those as well. So I refer to this as level 2. So these are some things that might start being a little more expensive and a little more detailed, depending on, again, what your mobility, what your health situation is, etc. So an outswing door, what that means is think about you go into your bathroom, right? And the door opens into the room. So now you're going in the bathroom, you close the door and you have a fall. And now you're up against the door. Nobody can get in that door. They can't move you. You're like a 1,000-pound person up against the door because that's what it feels like for someone trying to open it. Where if the door swung out, then you could rescue somebody. So again, depending on your situation, mobility, if you're there alone, whatever it might be, there might be some really good reasons on why an outswing door is something you should consider. A zero threshold entrance. So kind of like that picture I showed you earlier where just that 1 inch could make a really big problem for you if you're in a wheelchair. So we want to think about how do we get that zero threshold. That might include a ramp, that might include making a change in the entranceway so that somebody could, especially if it's a long-term situation, not a short-term. You know, these are things that can be wonderful permanent changes. I'll be the first to tell you they're not cheap. But again, if you're going to stay there, that's part of that planning process and understanding what makes sense and doesn't make sense in your home. These are things for you to consider. So we talked about comfort high toilets. Those are wonderful. 30-inch clearance space to one side of the toilet. So if you are someone who is going to be redoing your bathroom, let's just say it's part of your age in place plan, or you know, you're still young but you're going to redo this room. These are things you need to think about. So what does that mean? If you need assistance, so let's say you have a caregiver in the future, it's called a side assist, and it helps a caregiver assist you. So you want to think about how things, again, are situated in your bathroom so that someone can help you. Excuse me one second, I need to have water. Full extension glides on your drawers. I'm going to show you that picture. It's wonderful. Appliances, you want to make sure that you're not reaching for things. So if you're getting a new appliance, you should start considering ones that have front controls. So there are still ovens that you've got to reach across to try and turn the oven on. They now make new things where all of that technology, if you will, is right in the front, kind of where you're turning on the gas for the stove. You want to think about those things because, again, as we age, these things become a little more complicated, or we lose our balance and stuff. So these are all things that we want to talk about and think about. These are these wonderful full extension drawers I was talking about. Because the reality is it's inevitable that that pan or something you need is always at the back in the bottom. And there you are on your hands and knees, and now you can't figure out how to get up. So now you're calling your husband, you're calling your wife, or God forbid you're by yourself, you don't know who to call. But now you're on the floor and you can't get back up. So the beauty of this, again, it's just something that makes our life easier. Showers. So I talked about the two different types of showers. So again, depending on what your situation is, a shower that has, well, they refer to it as a walk-in shower is the picture on your left. So you'll see there's anywhere from a 1 to 3 inch curb, meaning there's a step up, if you will, to get into that shower. So somebody in a wheelchair is not going to be able to get in and out of there. But that is a much better option for somebody who's just simply aging. You can put grab bars there, etc. The one on the right is curbless. So there's nothing. You can literally roll into that shower. So the beauty of that is, should something change, maybe it's medical or simply a mobility issue, a strength thing, or even as a caregiver, they can literally wheel somebody right into there. There's no curbs involved. You cannot do a curbless shower though in a very small bathroom. Why? Because water travels, as we know, and you've got to have the ability to pitch the floor such that the water will go towards the drain. So it does require a little more space than a curb shower. If you're somebody or your loved one is in a wheelchair, some things we have to think about is having that turning radius. And that's an ADA compliancy, that you're able to turn around in an area. So you can see the cooking area and the sink area are wide enough that somebody in a wheelchair could turn around easily and not be trapped in an area that they can't get out of, especially in case of an emergency. Induction stovetops, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but some of my clients have them. And the beauty of that is that the only way, in case we're dealing with anything that's dementia driven, you worry about, are they going to leave the stove on and start a fire? Well, induction stovetops work with induction pots and pans, and it's a magnetic situation. So the only way they work is when they're magnetically attached to one another, and they also only work for a certain period of time. So the beauty of that is you don't have to worry about starting fires. Also, if you're going to consider redoing your kitchen anytime soon, for instance, or a bathroom, and let's say you don't have any mobility or health issues right now, consider having cabinets that are removable. You can do that in both your kitchen and bathroom. And you'll see there in this picture with the sink area, there were kitchen cabinets there. But now somebody in that house needed to remove them, but yet you didn't spend any money to redo your kitchen. You simply remove those cabinets and all of a sudden it's ADA compliant and someone in a wheelchair can use that area. So these are things you want to think about if you are in good health and you're planning to make some changes in your home. Think about what can be done in advance to prepare yourself should you need it, because now you don't have to redo your kitchen. You simply remove that cabinet. So we talked about a roll-up sink, how important that could be for somebody who is in a wheelchair. I don't know whoever designed a dishwasher that you have to go down to the floor to put your dishes in, but isn't this a wonderful thing where the dishwasher is raised up? That saves us from bending over, right? We don't want to get lightheaded, and it saves our backs and our knees. And they're just other features that when you're going to change your kitchen, we need to think about how can we make those changes for our future to make things easier for ourselves. If you're someone who does have a loved one in a wheelchair or something like that takes place, and if it's temporary or permanent, this is a wonderful little lift that can be put, they do have a version for outside, like on your porch area, or right here in a garage, and it's just like a little elevator and it brings you right up. Now you don't have to worry about how you're going to get up those 3 stairs to get in the house. So even if you're in a walker, it's a wonderful feature. It's a little mini elevator that brings you up to the first floor area. If you have a situation where you have a temporary situation, so maybe you broke a hip and you had surgery and you went to rehab and now you're coming home and you're going to be in a wheelchair for a while, you might want to consider a temporary ramp. So this picture shows you a metal temporary ramp. Now, they are not the most beautiful to look at, but you are not changing the front of your home. Keep in mind, ramps is a 1 to 12 inch. So what that means is for every inch you have to go up a stair, you have to have 12 inches of ramp. And that's just the pitch on the ramp. So depending on how many steps you have on your porch, that could be a big problem. And you could have a ramp going down the street somewhere. So as you can see, this kind of curves to allow how it's going to be placed at the home, but it's also temporary. Now, if you have something that's long-term, we might want to look at something that's a more of a fixture that enhances your home versus that temporary metal look. The other problem based on where we live, which is in the Midwest here, the metal ones are not so great for the winter. Why? Because they become icy and slippery. So again, depends on what your needs might be and what makes the most sense. Level 3 is getting in a little deeper again. So now, we're getting older, some things are changing and we want to stay here. We'll call it forever. So front loading side-by-side washers and dryers. Why are those wonderful? Because everything is right in front of you. You're not standing on your tippy toes trying to pull the wash out of the washing machine because it's all the way down there and you can't get to it. Again, we don't want to set ourselves up for that fall. We don't want to set ourselves up for getting lightheaded or just losing our balance in general. So side-by-side front-loading washing machines are always wonderful things, and they should be on your first floor. We do not want you traveling down the basement stairs while you're holding laundry or coming up with a laundry basket. You can fall and hurt yourself just as badly going up as you can going down. So we need to think about, is there a way to do that on your first floor? And again, depending on the home, these are things that we need to look at and see what makes sense for your long-term plan. There are many smart appliances out there. There's medication dispensers. If you're that person who, you need someone to remind you to take that 10 a.m. Pill that you need to take, these dispensers work and they remind you. It dispenses it and basically talks to you and say, take your medication. And they're wonderful new technology that you can put in your home. It's kind of like the whole smart TV thing. So these are wonderful features that add to your plan. Motion lighting. So I love this idea. For whatever reason, we get up in the middle of the night and we think that if we don't turn the light on, we'll be able to go right back to sleep. Well, the problem with that is you're setting yourself up for potentially tripping on something, losing your balance, just not seeing your way. So I love to install where you put your feet on the floor coming out of bed, and it's a soft light and it's a motion detector. So it registers that your feet are there, and it gives you a soft path light so that you can safely make it in and out of the bathroom without turning the lights on, because that's what we all try to do. Again, with technology, your HVAC can be controlled. We all know what the Nest is. These are things that, if it's something that maybe you're not comfortable with, maybe you have a family member, your grandchildren, because, the younger they are, they all know how to do technology, or your adult children, they can set these things up for you and be able to control these things for you, and making sure that they're very much more efficient. But all these things can be really wonderful things. In fact, one of the things that I love is they have the locks coming into a home that are keypads. So the reason I like that is, let's say you are somebody who's going to have a caregiver or already have a caregiver, but let's just say Susie doesn't work out. Susie had a key to your house. So what are you going to do? Keep changing the locks to your door? No. If you have a keypad, you could very easily just reprogram it, or have somebody reprogram it for you. And then the next person who comes there has a different code. And that way we don't have to worry about our security. Because one of the things that we aim here for too is, the older we get, the more we have to think about our security. So we want to make sure that it's not only that fall, but it's also our security. So things like, automated things like the ring that goes on your doorbell. It's a wonderful feature to have, because you won't answer the door. You don't want to answer the door unless you're expecting somebody. Don't answer the door. But everything, again, can be controlled. Smoke alarms can be controlled that way. So there's all kinds of different things. This is a situation where this gentleman, for instance, is a long-term accessibility plan. So again, if you're in a situation that maybe you're already in a wheelchair, or it's something new that just took place, or you thought it was going to be short-term and now it's turning into long-term, then these are some changes that we need to think about. As you can see, he's still keeping his independence, still being able to do things for himself. And that's a big part of aging in place, is keeping yourself engaged in the world, keeping yourself healthy by doing, some exercises. My goodness, you can do it all through apps now, and YouTube, and, on your smart TV, all these things come up, or the programs at the library, they offer all these things, and you follow along, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to stay at home. You don't need to go somewhere to do it necessarily. Well, part of that long-term plan are things like this, having that stovetop that he can wheel under. He can still do all these things for himself. And the longer he can do these things without having to have assistance and pay for assistance, the longer he's keeping that nest egg, if you will, of money, and not paying it out to people to assist him. So again, these are things that we have to think about. So we talked about smart homes. The beauty of technology is, and we all learned all of this, what Zoom was, for goodness sakes, during a pandemic. Many of you might have known what Zoom was before the pandemic, but I will tell you that there's a very large group of people who did not know what Zoom was, and or they just didn't use it, and now it's like an everyday thing. The beauty of that was, like it's shown in this picture, these people were able to stay in contact with their grandchildren or their children, because we were all afraid to be around each other at one point. So these are wonderful technology things, and that's all part of things that you can set up in what we call a smart home. And that goes down to your TVs doing things, to controlling the HVAC, controlling lighting, controlling appliances, your blinds, for goodness sakes. You can press a button and your blinds open and close. So there's all kinds of wonderful things. And security cameras, we talked about security cameras. And those are important because, again, at the end of the day, it is about your safety, not only physically your safety, but also physically in the home, from keeping from falling and things of that nature. So that's all part of that plan. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you have to think about maintaining that home, not only for the value so that you have it, but we want to make sure that you're maintaining things, because We want to make sure that the furnace is going to turn on when the winter hits. And if you're not maintaining it, by year 3, it's not going to turn on. And now the problem with that is it's going to be 20 below, and now you can't even get an HVAC guy to come to your house because everybody and their brother is calling the HVAC guy for the same exact problem. So we want to make sure that all these things are being maintained in the home if you plan to stay at the home. So you want to think about monthly and annual inspections, working with someone who's going to help you maintain that home. If it's something that, if you're not mechanically driven, or maybe a lot of our clients are single women who maybe their husbands used to handle those things, you want to make sure that someone's going to help you with those things so that they're being done properly. And I refer to a lot of this as senior crisis management. What am I doing? Am I going to age in place? Am I going to transition into senior living? Who's going to maintain my home? And all these different features of what needs to take place in your long-term plan. So I thank everyone for their time. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But I appreciate having your attention. I hope you learned a few things today. I told you 2 number 1 things. Please remove any of those suction cup grab bars. They are not safe. And keep that folder going, because you need to find important people that you can work with in your future when you need them.
Thank you so much, Gina. And just thinking about that folder, that's sort of one of the things that we've been trying to do with this ACES series, is to provide a consolidated source of information for people. So again, you're not trying to search the whole internet when—
Right, because it's just, you're going to get a whole bunch of information that might not actually be helpful or become very confusing.
Exactly. Just a reminder to people that you can go ahead and open up your Q&A or pop a question into the chat. And while we're thinking through some of the great information that you provided tonight, let me just ask you, if someone is in their home and thinking about the various possibilities available to them, is there someone that they could call, or is there an organization that they could contact that could kind of help them assess what the situation is and maybe get some idea about what to attack first, or what some of the costs might be?
So, well, we actually do that, and that's what a certified aging in place specialist is. They'll come into the home and we do a full assessment and we do a report, and we basically give you, it's usually like I call it an A and B plan, and it's the A are the hot items, right? It's based on your current mobility, your current medical conditions, your current home setup, and the most important things that need to be done today, along with kind of like a budget that kind of give you an idea of what those things are kind of looking at cost wise. And then the B things are usually, well, if your mobility changes or whatever the medical situation might be, these are things that we have to consider again in the future of things that might need to be changed as well. The other thing of what we do is we're also working with families to determine, is home really the right option? So that's why I refer to it as senior crisis management, because it feels like a crisis when you're trying to make that decision. What's the right thing to do? Should I stay in my home? Would I be better off in a community? Would I be better off with my children? They've offered for me to come. It's so hard to make those decisions. And unless you're talking to somebody who understands the cost to do things in your home, the right things to do in your home, knows what it costs to go into senior living, you want to reach out to somebody who's going to help you make those decisions. It's just like choosing a community to go to. Let's say you decide you don't want to age in place. Again, you don't want to start Googling, right? You want to work with somebody who understands how senior living works, wants to understand how to take in conjunction your financial situation, so what you can afford to do, and show you those right communities, as well as making sure you're going to be somewhere that someone's going to come visit you. So maybe it might mean if your children are in California, maybe you should think about, well, maybe I should go to California if I'm going to be in senior living. Maybe doing that here doesn't make any sense, because again, we don't want that social isolation. So again, that's just part of that plan, to think about, what does it cost? How do I do that? Pros and cons, like we talked about earlier. It's all of that.
Great, great. Thank you so much. And someone is asking, wonderful services for seniors. Do you ever provide that type of service for a family with, say, an adult child with a developmental delay and some of the concerns in the home around that situation?
Yes, because it's very similar, right? It's a mobility and or medical situation. So we will help families in that same thing where we redesign what makes sense for their long-term care in the home.
Great, thank you. And would one of those assessments be based partly on like the value of the home, the cost of those assessments, the value of the home, or an income, or how do you determine the cost of those assessments?
For the assessment, I don't know how anyone else does it. The way we do it is it's a consulting fee of $400. We come to the home and we create the report for you. And we make all of the suggestions of what should be done in the home. And in my situation, I not only can design it, but we can actually do it for you. We actually provide the modifications. But if you chose not to work with us, you can actually take that report because you paid for it. You take that report and have anyone you want to do it. So that's the benefit of having the report, if you will.
Great. Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Someone is asking another question. They're living in a condo. Is it still possible to put a curb shower next to, sorry, I'm just trying to read the question. Can you, the curb or the curbless shower next to a toilet? Because of the amount of space. Can you give us a general sense of maybe, is it 36 inches? Is it 48 inches that you would need? Maybe you don't know off the top of your head.
Yeah, it actually, part of the factor is it's harder to do I call it a roll-in or no threshold shower. It's harder to do that in a condo. And the reason being is most of the time, you have to also remove part of the flooring in order to create that pitch. Remember we talked about so that water's not flying all over the place. So you could do a roll-in shower that had, everybody probably knows what a barn door is. You know how they slide from side to side? You could actually do a glass barn door that could secure that water. And we do what's called a crush guard. And a crush guard is, let's see how to describe it, like a softer piece of rubber, kind of like a tube, and you could roll right over it. So what it does is it allows you in a wheelchair to roll over it, but it also acts as like a barrier from water coming out. Now, that is no guarantee that no water's coming out, but it does prevent, I'll call it a flood going on. And again, it goes also back to that whole thing with the handheld shower heads, because you can direct water, and that's the beauty behind them. So you could possibly do something like that in a condo. But again, every situation is so different just based on where the plumbing is, if you have access to things underneath. So like in a home, you know, if it's a drop ceiling underneath, obviously it's easier to get to things. So that's always a factor. And it kind of also depends on what the flooring is made out of. So sometimes if you have one of those, what they call shower pans, or you have a one of those plastic molded tubs, sometimes what happens is when you remove them, there's a gap in there and it allows you to re-pitch the floor because of how they were installed. The downside to those molded tubs and molded sidewalls, if you go to install grab bars, there's no backing behind there, chances are. So there might be a void behind there, meaning like an open area. So you go to screw something in and there's nothing to grab onto. So a lot of times what we do is we remove those molded walls and put tile there, because then I can put the backing there to support the grab bars. Because again, like I said, a grab bar, if you weigh 150 pounds, if you're in a falling motion, it's like 450 pounds.
And just as a follow-up question for converting that shower, would you also recommend converting a tub into a shower, even if it has a curb over?
Yes, yes, I would.
leaving the
Yes, I
tub?
would, because there's none of that. Think about it. You're lifting your leg, depending on the size of the tub, as much as a foot up in the air. And then you've got to reach up and over. So anybody at any age could so easily lose their balance. So yes, if you have the means to do it, I would highly recommend, at a minimum, do a shower with a curb.
Great, great. And again, if we aren't quite getting the answer to your question, please type it in again, and so that we can really try and get to the answer. Another person is asking about walk-in tubs. Would those be a good possibility?
So the reason I don't like them, I know they show them on TV all the time, but what nobody ever seems to think about is, so now you walk into the tub, right? So you walk in and you're sitting there and you fill the tub and it's all wonderful because you walked into the tub. But now the only way you can get out of that tub is when the water drains, right? Because the door's not going to open. Why? Because the water would go everywhere if it did. But the problem is you're sitting in this tub with no clothes on and you're freezing, waiting for the water to drain. So for me, I just think that's the craziest thing in the world, that you want to sit there waiting for this water to drain, because it's the only way you can open up the door.
Okay, good point. Yeah.
So nobody thinks about that. They make it look so glorious on TV, and all I do is shake my head going, who wants to sit there naked and frozen?
Right. So you would recommend converting the tub to a shower stall?
Yes, long before a walk-in. That's my personal take on it.
Right. Even if it has to have that lip or curb on
it. Yeah, agreed. 100%. Yes. And because let's think about it. What's the percentage of people that really do end up in a wheelchair? It's a smaller percentage, right? So if you did the curb, obviously you're not going to deal with water going anywhere, and it's a million times safer than any tub ever would be.
Okay, great. Someone is also asking regarding the assessment. Would that include options and recommendations regarding maybe home health services or ideas around?
Yes, I personally do that. So I have all of my colleagues who I need for any situation, whether it's legal, financial, home health services, occupational, physical therapy, whatever it might be. At my company, we're able to service our client no matter what we need. So that's why we call it professional concierge care. So whatever you need, we're here to help you.
Sounds great. Okay, that is the end of the questions that were entered. So we'll give people maybe just one more minute to do that again. Enter a question here at the last minute or so, but let me just say thank you to you, Gina, so much, and
you're very welcome.
To Keeper and to the National Aging in Place Council for providing this great information.
Yeah, and that's another thing. So the National Aging, just so for those of you who don't know what that is, so I'm actually the founder and chairman of the National Aging in Place Council for the Chicagoland area, and what it is we go through background checks with the national organization, which is a non-for-profit, and we go through a background check so that we are verified that we're businesses that can work with seniors, and we've gone through that background check to make sure that we're trusted vendors and trusted resources. And to be part of that organization, you have to go through that process. So there's all different types of services within NAIPC. So you could either reach out to me to ask me that question, or even for NAIPC, our email address for that is chicagoland@ageinplace.org. And you can go to ageinplace.org and just learn about the organization as well.
Great, thank you so much. And so I will be sending out some contact links in an email later tonight, as well as some other resources. If you would like those and you're watching the recording of this program, you can email me at ce@wheatonlibrary.org. That's CE for Community Engagement at wheatonlibrary.org, and I'd be happy to send those out to you. So with that, I think that's all of our questions answered. Thank you again, Gina, for your time and effort to put this together for us.
You're so welcome.
Everyone, have a great evening. Take care, and we hope to see you again soon. Good night.